Viking horns. Vikings never wore horned helmets. That whole image comes from the 1800s when artists and opera designers wanted to make Norse warriors look more dramatic and exotic. They slapped horns on helmets for paintings and stage productions, and the idea just stuck in popular culture. Actual archaeological digs have turned up Viking helmets, and they're all practical metal caps without any horns or decorations sticking out. Makes sense when you think about it. Horns would be a terrible liability in combat, giving opponents something to grab or adding weight that throws off your balance. The real Vikings wore simple, functional gear designed to keep them alive. Goldfish memory. You've probably heard that goldfish forget everything after 3 seconds, which would make them the dumbest pets on the planet. Turns out that's completely wrong. Goldfish can actually remember things for months, not seconds. Researchers have trained them to recognize different colors, respond to specific sounds, and even navigate mazes. They learn feeding schedules and remember which part of the tank they get food in. Some studies showed goldfish could distinguish between different pieces of music. So next time someone uses goldfish memory as an insult, they're actually complimenting a pretty decent memory system. Great Wall from space. You've probably heard that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space. Like, it's one of those facts that gets repeated everywhere. But here's the thing. It's completely false. Astronauts who've actually been up there have confirmed you cannot see the wall with your naked eye from orbit. The wall is only about 30 feet wide at most, and from a couple hundred miles up, that's way too narrow to pick out. Plus, the materials used to build it, stone and earth, blend right into the surrounding terrain. You'd need a camera with a good zoom to spot it, and even then you'd be looking for it specifically. Lightning never strikes twice. You've probably heard people say, lightning never strikes the same place twice, usually when they're trying to reassure someone that a bad thing won't happen again. But that's completely wrong. Lightning actually loves hitting the same spots over and over, especially anything tall that sticks up into the sky. The Empire State Building gets nailed around 20 to 25 times every single year. That's because lightning takes the path of least resistance to the ground. And if you're the tallest thing around, you're basically a lightning magnet. So if lightning hits your house once, there's actually a decent chance it could happen again. Sugar makes kids hyper. You've probably heard parents blame candy for turning their kids into tiny tornadoes, but here's the thing. Sugar doesn't actually make children hyper. Scientists have tested this over and over, giving some kids sugar and others fake sugar without telling anyone which was which, and they found no real difference in behavior. What's happening is simpler. Kids usually get sugary treats at parties, holidays, or special events where they're already excited and running around. Your brain connects the sugar with the chaos, but the chaos was there anyway. Parents who think their kid had sugar also report more hyperactive behavior even when the kid didn't actually get any, which tells you it's mostly expectation and context doing the work. We use 10% of brains. You've probably heard this one. Humans only use 10% of their brains, and if we could just tap into that other 90%, we'd unlock telepathy or photographic memory or whatever. It's complete nonsense. Brain imaging shows that virtually all parts of your brain are active throughout the day. And even when you're asleep, most areas are still firing away doing maintenance work. There are no dormant sections just sitting there waiting to give you superpowers. Different regions handle different jobs: vision, movement, memory, language, and they're all getting used. The myth probably stuck around because it sounds inspiring, like we all have this untapped potential. We don't. Your brain is already working pretty much at full capacity. Bulls hate red. You've probably heard that bulls go crazy when they see red, and that's why matadors use red capes. Complete myth. Bulls are actually colorblind to red and green. They see the world in shades of blue and yellow. What really sets them off is the movement of the cape, not the color. If you waved a bright blue towel or even a white sheet in front of a bull the same way, you'd get the same reaction. The animal is reacting to motion and perceived threat, plain and simple. Matadors use red capes because the color looks dramatic to the audience and helps hide bloodstains, not because it enrages the bull. Bats are blind. People say bats are blind, but that's completely wrong. Every single bat species can see. Some of them actually have excellent vision, especially the larger fruit bats that rely on their eyes to spot food from a distance. The confusion comes from the fact that many bats use echolocation to navigate and hunt in the dark, sending out high-pitched sounds and listening for the echoes that bounce back. But echolocation doesn't mean their eyes don't work. Their vision is adapted for low light conditions, which makes sense since they're mostly active at night. They use both their eyes and echolocation depending on what they're doing. Shaving thickens hair. This is one of those myths that just won't die, probably because of how convincing the illusion is. When you shave, you're cutting the hair off at the skin surface with a blade, which leaves a blunt, flat edge instead of the natural tapered tip that untouched hair has. That blunt edge feels coarser and looks darker because you're seeing the thickest part of the hair shaft right at the surface. The reality is that shaving doesn't touch the hair follicle or change anything about how your hair grows. Your genetics determine the rate, color, and texture of your hair growth, and a razor gliding over your skin can't rewrite your DNA. Cracking knuckles equals arthritis. You've probably heard this one from a parent or teacher. Crack your knuckles and you'll get arthritis when you're older. Turns out that's completely false. The sound you hear when you crack your knuckles comes from gas bubbles in the joint fluid popping, not anything breaking or wearing down. Multiple studies have found zero connection between knuckle cracking and arthritis. The most dedicated researcher on this was a doctor named Donald Unger, who spent 50 years cracking the knuckles on his left hand at least twice a day while leaving his right hand alone. After 5 decades, both hands were perfectly fine with no arthritis in either one. Ostriches bury heads. You've probably heard that ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, like they think if they can't see the danger, it can't see them. That's not what actually happens. When an ostrich spots a predator and decides hiding is the best option, it drops down flat on the ground and stretches its neck out along the sand. Their heads are pale and blend right in with the dirt. From a distance, especially if you're looking at this giant bird suddenly go flat, it looks like the head just disappeared into the ground. They're not burying anything. They're just making themselves as low and camouflaged as possible, which is actually a pretty smart move for something that big. Napoleon was short. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't short. The famous image of the tiny angry emperor is completely wrong. He stood 5'7", which was actually average or slightly above average for French men at the time. So, where did this myth come from? 2 main things. First, French inches were longer than English inches, so when his height was recorded as 5'2" in French measurements, British newspapers converted it wrong and reported him as drastically shorter. Second, British propaganda during the Napoleonic Wars loved portraying him as a small, ineffective man to mock him. The cartoon stuck in people's minds way better than the actual facts, and we're still dealing with it 200 years later.